Oh my god. I just woke up and I turned over to my phone and I opened up Twitter and immediately I saw Guild Wars 2's latest post. They just released a blog post titled ArenaNet Studio Update June 2022. The last one we got was actually like last month in May. I didn't realize we'd be getting one of these every single month, but that is just fucking awesome to see. Now this is super off the cuff. I haven't scripted this video or anything. I just wanted to go through some of the most important stuff from this blog post. If I sound really pumped for this update, it's because I am. Maybe it's because I have too much caffeine flowing through my veins right now. Regardless, let's talk about this update because there's a lot of cool stuff in here. Even if you're not a seasoned player and you're a new player, there's a lot to get excited about. So let's dive straight into it. The first section is about the End of Dragon's strike missions. They brought on Cameron Rich, the lead systems designer on Guild Wars 2. It seems like strikes have been a success for ArenaNet. They've said they've seen a significant increase in the number of players playing strikes for the first time. But they note that strike mission rewards are something that a lot of people have been discussing in the community for a while. In my last video, I actually talked about how that was one of the main reasons I kind of took a break from the game for the last few weeks. And so here they've stated that they are doubling the rewards. So here's the new breakdown. The first two strikes, Aetherblade Hideout and Zunlai Jade Junkyard, will give you 2 gold on the normal version and an additional 2 gold on the challenge mode. And then the last 2 strikes, Kaineng Overlook and Harvest Temple, will give you 4 gold on normal completions and another 4 gold on challenge mode completions. This is to adjust for the fact that the first 2 are definitely easier than the last 2, but this means you can earn up to a total of 24 liquid gold every week for completing the challenge modes of all 4 of these strikes. On top of that, you will also get 1 weekly antique summoning stone per strike mission. These are the materials that you need to craft the new legendaries, and they go for about 8 to 9 gold per piece. So if you don't need the antique summoning stones and you end up selling them off immediately, this means you can basically earn like up to 50 gold per week from doing just all the challenge modes, which is very awesome. I love this a lot. Like, there's definitely some other great gold farms in the game. A lot of open world farms have you earning something like 25 to 30 gold per hour, but I say that with a big asterisk because to actually get that gold, to get that liquid gold, you have to jump through a few hoops. You know, you get a currency from those events and then you've got to convert them into materials. You've got to sell those materials or promote those materials up to sell them. It's a whole process that mostly only experienced players know about and can get the maximum yield from those events. So if you're a player like me and you're lazy and you don't give a shit about all that and you just want to get flat liquid gold, then this is kind of like one of the best ways to earn gold every week. Is 50 gold per week enough to get players jumping into challenge mode strikes for the first time? I mean, probably not. Like, that's a lot of gold, but the time commitment to completing these challenge modes is quite high. They are very difficult. That said, I do think ArenaNet needed to strike a balance between giving enough incentive to get new players into it, while also making sure that veteran players that have a full squad that do weekly clears every week aren't earning a huge amount of liquid gold. So I think this is a great balance. But on top of this, they're also adding a new reward to strike missions. The Imperial Everbloom Infusion. Seems like it'll give your character the, you know, cherry blossom effect where you've got some nice pink flower petals floating around you. Infusions are basically the high value lottery items that come from a lot of open world events and that sort of thing. They tend to sell for like over 2,000 gold. They cost more than legendaries. But they stated there'll be 2 ways to obtain it. An account-bound version can actually be purchased from the Strike Mission Rewards vendor once you've completed all 4 challenge modes. How much it costs? We really have no idea. I'm sure it'll cost a bunch of green profit shards. But Strike challenge modes will have a chance to drop an unbound version of this Imperial Everbloom Infusion. So this can be freely traded and sold. I imagine it's going to sell for a lot. Really depends on how many people are doing challenge mode strikes. But you have a total of 4 chances per week to get this. Very cool lottery item for veterans to look forward to when they're clearing challenge mode strikes. There was a section talking about how they've improved the quality assurance testing process for challenge mode strikes, and they're excited for the Harvest Temple challenge mode to release on June 28th. But the next section talks about some core game improvements, which was quite surprising to see. Something we didn't really know is that there's actually a team that seems to work on really minor quality of life improvements, like the recent changes to dungeon rewards. And it seems they've been working on other stuff as well. So the first thing they seem to be adding is a new option for cursor modes. You can now change the cursor contrast from off to low to high. Rest in peace, YOLO mouse. The next thing is that they've deleted armor repairs. So previously, if you die too many times, your armor will break and you've got to go find an anvil and repair your armor. That is no longer a thing. It's gone. Anvils and repair canisters will now give you a health and defense increase for 12 hours instead. The big one is that the next section talks about improving raid accessibility. Raids are back, baby. They are back. They started by saying that raids are exciting in-game content, but they have a high barrier to entry and can be difficult to break into. When I started reading this, I thought they were going to add matchmaking and I was going to lose my mind. Unfortunately, nothing as groundbreaking as that. But now, when you hit your head against the wall, over time, your head will become calloused and strengthened. And now you too can become emboldened by the flame of ambition in the form of this new emboldened mode. They state that basically every week, there will be one raid wing that will be set to the emboldened mode. You will start with one stack of it as soon as you enter, but you can always turn it off at an emboldened mode. After dying enough times, the emboldened can stack up to 100% additional health, 50% increased damage, and 50% increased healing output. And then when you kill the boss, the emboldened resets to one stack. So this is a huge change and basically gives raids like an easy mode. This is actually really similar to a system that Final Fantasy XIV has, where their old fights have this thing called the Echo that ramps up your stats for every wipe. I know that over the holidays, Cameron played a lot of Final Fantasy XIV and it definitely shows here. But yeah, I suspect this is going to bring a whole lot of new players into raids. Now that there's basically one wing per week that is selected to be essentially the training run for that week. This is the exact kind of difficulty I actually like to see in video games, where instead of an easy mode that basically removes a bunch of the mechanics, you instead have a system where we see all the exact same mechanics, except they're going to be a little less punishing now that you've got those stat increases. Now, on top of this, they're also splitting the LFG into two groups. They're going to be splitting it into a training group and an experienced group. That is really awesome. No longer do we have to deal with raid sellers filling up the universal raid LFG. I also think it's a cool psychological thing because now that we've got a training tab, I'm sure a lot of players that are new to raids are going to be a little less hesitant to start their own groups now because, you know, now there's a whole category dedicated to that. And I'm really excited to see what happens when this gets implemented. I'd love to be able to open up that training category and just see loads of runs dedicated to training new players. I am missing a lot of legendary insights, which I need to complete my legendary armor. And what I'm hoping is that I can just complete that one emboldened wing every week, and I'll be able to get the rest of them from that because there'll be lots of training runs going on. And it might act as a good way to blend raiding veterans and raiding newcomers together. And I can't wait to see how this impacts the raiding scene. So the next section is talking about how story instances in the game, if you enter a story instance, you'll see that red zone on the map. If you step into the red zone for like 2 seconds, you just get booted from the story instance and you gotta start again. They implemented something new in End of Dragons where instead of getting booted, you just get teleported back inside the boundary. And now they've implemented this across the game in every story instance. Honestly, this is a great change, and it's been a very big pain point for a lot of players for a long time, so that is great to see. So that's basically all the core updates, and those will be dropping on June 28th, the same date as the June Professions update. So they have a preview here. Let's briefly talk about that. There is a lot to go through, and we're going to get way more info on all of this on Friday. So I won't go through all of it, but the TLDR is basically that they want to give broader access to key boons in the game across all professions. What does this mean? If you're a new player, you probably have no idea what this means. In the game, we do not have a hard holy trinity of DPS, tank, healer. We have what basically Kroof describes as a role pentagram, which is basically a tank, DPS, healer, and then we have 2 dedicated roles to maintaining 2 very important boons, quickness and alacrity. Quickness gives you an attack speed boost, alacrity gives you cooldown reductions. If you want to learn more about roles and that sort of thing, Kroof has a great video on this. Go check out his video. But basically, these roles are filled by very specific classes at the moment because there's just classes that provide these boons way more easily than others. Some straight up do not have access to these boons. And a lot of support roles are suffering because of it. For example, if you're playing a healer and you can't give quickness or alacrity, you're going to have a lot of difficulty finding groups, because in this environment with like 10-player squads, you want to compress roles as much as possible. They go through a lot of the changes here. You can read them for yourself. I won't go too deeply into them, but it seems like pretty much every class in the game will now have a spec to provide alacrity and a spec to provide quickness. Specs like Tempest and Herald were really cool support specs, but they didn't provide either of these boons, so they just weren't that valuable. But now they have access to them, which is awesome to see. I especially really liked the Chronomancer change, so this is the Mesmer spec. They can now choose to either provide quickness or alacrity based on their Grandmaster trait. This is a really cool looking change. It makes Chronomancers seem like that boon tank class fantasy that Chronomancers should be, so that's really cool to see. One big change is that warriors, they have access to these things called banners, and rangers have access to spirits, and these basically provided unique stacking buffs to the entire squad, which made them very desirable and almost necessary to have in your party. Otherwise, you'd really feel like you're missing out. And now these unique boosts are going to be removed and replaced with actual boons. So warriors will now be able to provide quickness with their banners, and rangers can now provide alacrity, which are boons that these two classes basically had zero access to. So they were only really needed for those unique boons. So it's nice to see them now more in line with other classes in the game. So awesome changes all around. As I said, I'm going to get into it next week when the changes drop. I'm very excited for this. I think it's going to shake up the meta a lot. I feel like a lot of the specs are going to feel like brand new specs, and I can't wait to see these changes play out. I'm sure there will be zero complaining on the subreddit. The community is going to come together and be a peaceful, graceful utopia where everyone's happy about the changes and no more changes are needed. Anyway, that's it for the blog post. They wrap up noting that in early to mid-July, we're going to get another development roadmap, which will lay out their plans through to the end of summer. So look forward to that. I have to say, it's just awesome seeing this level of communication from ArenaNet. I love seeing these monthly posts. We basically never got to see stuff like this for a very long time. Overall, this update was incredible. These are some S-tier changes right here, and I'm very excited to see what else ArenaNet has in store for us this year. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you later.